Hi, I'm Pierre, the VP of Engineering here at Split, and I'll be your moderator today. Today we're going to discuss about the future of software, and we have three fantastic panelists who have been very successful at understanding software trends over the years, and who will share with us what they think the future of software is. So let's start with a quick round of introduction. Priyanka, would you like to start?
Hi, my name is Priyanka Mitra. I'm an investor at M12, Microsoft's venture fund. We invest in B2B enterprise tech at Series A through Series C stages and are looking for the top talent globally in enterprise SaaS the world over.
Thank you. Arif?
Hi, I'm Arif Janmohamed. I'm a partner at Lightspeed Venture Partners. We're a multi-stage firm, global in nature. We've got offices in Silicon Valley, India, Israel, China, and the UK. Latest set of funds raised was a $4 billion set of funds that we raised last year. We do a lot of work across enterprise, consumer, as well as healthcare.
And finally, but not the least, Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam Bain. I'm the managing partner at O1 Advisors. O1 Advisors is a fund for operators by operators. It's founded by a bunch of us who have actually operated at scale businesses before. I'm the former chief operating officer of Twitter, where I was there for about 7 years, and happy to be here today.
Welcome all. Thank you for being here. So maybe let's get things started. First question to get into the subject. We've seen huge IPOs of B2B companies like Snowflake that serve development and IT teams. Why do you think it's happening now? And what does 2021 have in store? Maybe Adam, you can get us started.
Sure. So your question is why now? I think, the why now is that it turns out these companies are fantastic businesses. In fact, let me give you a really interesting data point. If you go through and look at public companies and sort by one statistic in particular, and that's net dollar retention, these companies really stand out. These developer-centric companies, they're ranked at the top of the list when you look at NDR. NDR, net dollar retention, are these things that VCs love. It's a stat that VCs love to see. In fact, if you look at Arif right now, you see that he's just salivating over there the moment I say even NDR. Net dollar retention essentially is a revenue formula. It's expressed as a percentage. It's accounting for basically the amount of revenue that retain, accounting for the upsells, the downgrades, and the churn. World-class is anything, I guess, over 120% or so. A different way to say it is if a business stopped adding any new customers tomorrow, would they still be able to grow? And the answer, when you sort by these companies, is yes, absolutely. If you think about these companies whose sole customers, the developer, the engineer, the NDR is off the charts. These are companies like Snowflake and Datadog and Twilio and JFrog and the like. And so you ask why now? I think it's because these businesses are amazing and will continue to grow. So that's the investor answer. Let me tell you why that matters, though, to you also as a customer. I think it's because these businesses will then be around. They'll thrive. They'll end up being very profitable businesses. And as a result, they'll just get better. When you're a customer and you're making a buying decision, you're always wondering, am I going to invest in a company that's not going to be around in the future? And I think the answer for these types of businesses is overwhelmingly that they'll be here to stay and they'll be great.
Yeah, I'll add to that. That's absolutely right. These types of businesses get highly valued because of this phenomenon where you sell once, or a product is acquired once and then it just expands over time. And having invested in enterprise technologies for 13 years myself at Lightspeed and as a firm over 20 years, what has fundamentally changed is the buyer behavior and the center of buying. So if you look at enterprise companies in the 90s, early 2000s, this was the first generation of enterprise software and enterprise infrastructure companies. VMware you can put in that bucket, for example. Splunk, the first generation of Splunk you can put in that bucket. Companies like Workday, like ServiceNow. these are all companies where the buyer, the fundamental economic buyer, is the CIO, the Chief Information Officer, or the IT leader. And that means that the sales cycles are long. That means that there was proof of concepts that were lengthy. That meant that there was long procurement cycles. And that meant that every year in the old days before SaaS, you would start at zero in terms of having to create new bookings. SaaS came along and let you focus on first renewals and then new business. But over the last, I'd say 5 to 7 years, what has happened is the age of developer has blossomed. And what that means is that the decision making and the analysis of new products and the integration of new products has shifted from that CIO being the core decision maker to the developer, to the engineer. It's been democratized. And so what happened is, as a result of open source or source available or even free software, a developer, an engineer, you can learn about a new piece of software in a community. You can download it, you can go to lunch, you can get value in 45 minutes, you can come back from lunch, and you can get started. And then you tell the rest of your organization about how great the software is, and then you tell your friends at other organizations. And that then leads to much easier buying behavior, that leads to this magical NDR expansion, and that leads to very highly valued companies.
Yeah, and I think I'll just chime in with a little bit of perspective. I agree with all those points, and I think that we'll even continue to see more tailwinds going into 2021, with COVID actually being another tailwind on this sector. I think we're seeing that COVID is an enabler of businesses serving dev teams, whether in the enterprise or increasingly developer orgs and IT orgs in the small and mid-sized business sector as well. I see businesses like Snowflake and Split as enabling remote work for businesses that haven't even adopted remote environments yet. But enterprises are increasingly being pushed to proactively look for tools like Snowflake that enable this digital transformation. And we're seeing that revenue growth, I think, is far more robust for SaaS businesses that serve product and dev teams than even other SaaS businesses. And yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple reasons why SaaS businesses that serve developer teams and IT organizations are specifically seeing outsized success in the public markets. I think that as the ROI of software in general stays so high, the opportunity for developer tools aimed at improving the quality and velocity of shipping software is more in vogue than ever before. I'll stop there, but there's many reasons why I think there's a lot of tailwinds in this sector, and there's great cause to believe that we'll continue to see a lot of outsized successes.
That's well said. Also, I do want to note that I like how Arif laid out the customer journey, which included lunch as a key step.
Lunch is super important. In fact, at AppDynamics, one of Jyoti's fundamental design principles was download it, go to lunch, come back, and, wow value right after lunch. And so, that's very important. People don't have time to sit around and do these lengthy proof of concepts that can take months. They want, and you want, immediate value. And that's what's so amazing with this new set of developer tools, with these open source frameworks, with these new tool chains that exist. And the OG of this is actually Atlassian with Jira, in which it's a 17 or 18-year-old company now. Haven't looked at what it's valued at, but it's in the tens of billions. But they figured out that their audience is the developer. They marketed directly to the developer, and they bragged for many, many years that they didn't even have a sales force. It was just completely organic.
I love Priyanka's point around developer velocity as being kind of this key output metric, and that everybody's trying to rally around. And, it's such an elusive thing to get. Ultimately, it's that the North Star that everybody's trying to drive against. So I thought that was a great point.
And the interesting thing I'll just add is that a lot of these tools were born out of necessity. They were born inside very large organizations like a Microsoft or an Amazon or a Twilio or a Facebook or Google, and they were built because those companies were really pushing the boundaries of innovation, of developer velocity, and of shipping code. And as a result of that, engineers or entrepreneurs that were inside those companies really saw the need for tools like this, and wanted to democratize access to those tools and make it such that today every company is a software company, and give access to every software company access to these types of tools and frameworks.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add on to that. I think that the small and mid-sized business sector is another rising market for a lot of these tech companies where historically IT solutions and developer and even product manager org solutions weren't available until now. So the lighter weight SaaS products that are proving out a ton of value and driving a wave of adoption, maybe slower but wider than the enterprise market, sort of have a longer tail within the business software community.
A great segue. As we've seen a lot of excitement around low-code, CI/CD. You're talking about velocity, AI, data management, and analytics, and a lot more around there. Where are you seeing the most innovation in product and development tools, more specifically? Maybe Arif, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Well, first off, I'd like to thank you for completing my my buzzword bingo card. So you hit all of the major bingo words that were on my card, and all of the things that we're seeing on every single pitch these days. Yeah, what I'd say is it's along the theme of what I described, where these tools are being born out of necessity inside these large organizations, where those organizations are pushing the boundaries of innovation, and then there's entrepreneurs that are seeing the need and seeing the opportunity to democratize access to these new tools, these developer toolkits or frameworks or open source projects. Where we're seeing a lot of innovation for developers is just in efficiency. It's taking out a lot of the manual, tedious, painful processes that just slow people down, and that's why people call it low code. Is these are things stitched together workflows, stitched together processes, and then the other vector that I'd go down is data is super important. People are now recognize that companies like an Amazon, Facebook, a LinkedIn, and Netflix were really born around measuring what matters. And these new set of tools are really geared towards not only increasing efficiency, but measuring what matters, so that it's one of those loops. If you measure it, you can improve it, and you could actually improve not only metrics that matter, but business outputs that matter, and also developer efficiency.
Go ahead,
I was just going to say, your question is, where's innovation coming from? Can I select all? Can I just say all the above? I mean, look, all those areas that you mentioned, PA, have fast growth because every single company in the world is trying to build faster and build better. I do think it's interesting also the larger context around, where we find ourselves today. In kind of midst of pandemic land, hopefully on our way out of pandemic land, how that idea around building faster and better kind of plays through. And there is an interesting, idea, especially now, where it used to be the case when you would ask, is this a good place to work? Sometimes the answers would come back, which were around the physicality of a space, right? Or the fact that, this area has great food or great flavored water, and et cetera. And all that stuff now is irrelevant. And actually, is it a good place to work is really around those things that can't be passed off as culture, but instead are really at the core of getting stuff done. And the question for engineering teams are, at the job that you're at, can you get stuff done? Can you get stuff done effectively? And so I think that's really a key question. That's part of the reason why I think all of those things that you mentioned are seeing such growth, because it's ultimately at the core of engineers being able to ship without massive impediments. You really get to see, in the pandemic, you kind of get to see which emperor's developer teams have closed and which ones don't.
The other thing that's a massive tailwind here is we don't talk much about cloud anymore because it's fundamentally accepted. I mean, 10 years ago, everyone talked about cloud because it was brand new. 10 years ago, Amazon was doing probably about $1 billion in revenue in cloud. Now Amazon does 50 to 60 billion. Microsoft is doing, Priyanka, keep me honest here, but 30 or $40 billion, right? And, that absolutely necessitates a new set of tool chains, a new set of frameworks. And, a lot of these historically were built inside companies. Microsoft had their own internal development platform, internal developer tool chaining, Amazon the same way, Netflix the same way. But as you moved away from an on-premise environment where everything was proprietary, everything was closed, to an open environment where you can actually spin up as many machines as you want, assuming you can pay for it, and then spin it back down. Or you could spin up middleware layer. Middleware dates me obviously, but people call it different things. A PaaS layer to really drive innovation. Because of that, developers require a new set of tool chains, and the cloud has pushed us in the direction of enabling that. And then, PA, you talked about AI and ML. The same thing is happening. As we've shifted away from just batch analytic processing, where data was relatively stagnant inside a data lake, but where now today data is streaming in at an increased velocity, where that data lake is expanding, and where you want to segment that data, make decisions off that data, and actually build models off that. That also requires a new set of tool chains, a brand new set of platforms for developers to work on and collaborate with new parts of the organization, such as data scientists and data engineers.
Arif, I liked what you said about talking about overhauling existing frameworks in the developer toolchain. And I think for me, the most exciting macro trend is just seeing how a lot of these tools have enabled product development teams to overhaul the way they work internally as a part of a broader trend of digital transformation in their companies. My observation is that digital transformation has historically taken a long time. I think Arif and Adam both have a longer ranging perspective on that than I, but just watching trends over the past half decade or so. And I find that COVID is forcing some of these organizational changes. I've really never seen a faster clip of companies modernizing their IT orgs and their fundamental IT architectures, adopting transformational technologies that enable more agile ways of working. I like that Arif and Adam both mentioned that and that they find the democratization of developer tech to be exciting. I really find that I feel the same way. And I like that these tools enable organizations to adopt this high value technology at a fraction of the cost of what a small business or a mid-sized business would require to build it on their own. Not everyone has the internal resources to build these types of tools. And I really think that the democratization will enable an even faster clip of innovation that we've never seen before. I also think that just the implosion of data that we've seen, especially during the COVID era, with so much data being generated in remote work settings more than ever before, makes the technical aspects of capturing this data and visualizing insights quickly for developer teams even more tricky. It's always been tricky, but just even more difficult. And I think enabling developers with tools to be fed the right data, devoid of unnecessary noise, is another area that I find really exciting and on the forefront of innovation in this space.
So you've been mentioning COVID, like a few of you have been, like how it's been transforming things, changing obviously the life of many, but also the way we work. Like, so you talk about some of the transformation, is there like more transformation that you've seen COVID has triggered? And then as COVID subsides, what do you think is going to persist? What do you think is going to go away? And probably like coming with all of that is like, how has it changed your the type of companies you partner with, or and where they're based, and your view of basically how you do your work as investors? Priyanka, do you want to continue on your?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm personally extremely excited about the way COVID has impacting the way we're working, whether at the enterprise level or on a small business level. It does affect our thinking on the companies we're looking to partner with at M12, and I think there's so many cutting edge trends coming out of this that are net new. I think that as investors, what we're mainly looking for is products that foster connection among a distributed workforce, and technologies that enable better communication, collaboration in home offices, not just office settings, and enabling workers like gig workers, freelancers, to become more organized and automated. Excuse me. I think overarchingly, we're just looking for ways to enable tools that enable workers to be more happy and productive sustainably, because we do believe that these changes will persist beyond the COVID era, and that there's a really new era of digital and remote work that has been ushered in permanently. I think there's a couple trends that I've really just gotten very excited about recently. Pre-COVID, very few tech companies were fully remote. And I think that in the venture ecosystem, there will be a movement to reimagine what it means to run a company digitally from the ground up. I think the foundational elements for a fully remote tech company more or less exist, but could really continue to be iterated upon, whether it's, SaaS in the cloud, like Arif mentioned, or reliable video streaming, real-time documents. There's just iterative movements that can be made to improve what already exists. And I do feel that the TAM of fully remote companies and opportunities to iterate there will grow significantly. So it'll produce a whole new crop of exciting investment opportunities for us as investors. I think today a lot of business processes like interviewing, meetings, performance, activity and OKR tracking still live in a world of just very incremental steps versus viewing the larger picture. And I can imagine a world where every meeting is recorded and transcribed and searchable. That would really transform the way we work, in my opinion. But those aren't tools that exist today, but could really come into the forefront now that there's a lot of more innovation in this space. I was excited about the crop of companies in the early 2000s, like Etsy from 2005, TaskRabbit from, I think, 2007 or 8, Uber from 2009, that have basically created a whole new workforce of entrepreneurs. But many of these companies are over a decade old at this point, and I believe we can fully expect a new wave of companies that give more power to the individual, the gig economy, and just generally enable more seamless, productive remote work.
Yeah, I think just echoing that, I think the pandemic was just completely eye-opening for driving remote work, in that it totally did wonders in changing the archetype of the sole hero HQ that everything was in service to. And all of a sudden that completely changes when people now move to remote, and all of a sudden you get a feeling, especially of a hero HQ, and then you had a handful of people that were remote, how broken ultimately doing work in that environment is. I do think, hopefully, again, as an optimist, coming back out of COVID, we may see another work transition again into being more of a hybrid situation. I do wonder whether people, because we've gone now a year without human connection outside of your families and your close friends, is there going to be a rush to kind of go back? When once things are safe, kids go back to school, will workers want to go back to teams and office? So it's going to be something interesting to watch. I do think, as Priyanka mentioned, the tools will and should keep evolving. Everything that she mentioned, the video conferencing, the collaboration like whiteboarding, screen sharing, virtual events like all hands, et cetera, all the technology there is really sort of 1.0. And you're seeing the edges of what it can already do today. And so I think it is going to push a bunch of innovation in this area. All of these things really revolve around one core idea, and Priyanka mentioned it. It's really around collaboration. And it gets to the heart of, what does it mean to work as a team? What does it mean to work together to ship a product or to make customers happy? And I think these are all things that will totally evolve. I think if we go to this hybrid state, both teams that are in office and also remote, that's a really interesting setup that could win. And software that helps hybrid teams work better together, I think, are going to be more important than ever. The last thing I'd say is, pandemic basically spread us all out for over a year. And so if your question is what does 2021 look like? software that brings us closer, I think will be embraced.
Yeah, really, really well said, Priyanka and Adam. I totally agree with both of what you've said. In terms of, a few realizations. First, the realization for a lot of Silicon Valley companies that talent is global has really been accelerated and accepted, right? For many years, there was this acceptance that there was talent around the world, but there was this almost requirement that you build this hub, right? Whether that hub was in India, in Eastern Europe, in China, in Ottawa, Canada, wherever it was, you would have your headquarters in Silicon Valley with a lot of go-to-market teams in Silicon Valley, core engineering architecture in Silicon Valley, and then you'd have these hubs. You'd have an office in Bangalore, you'd have an office in Ottawa, you'd have an office in the UK or whatever that might be. What the pandemic has really driven and accelerated is this fact that a developer can be anywhere, and that developer can work around the clock, and that actually the way that we work and collaborate across time zones, across geographies, across cultures has dramatically changed. And I think that is the one silver lining out of this whole pandemic is the global company has been born over the last year. And that global company may still have a headquarters or a series of small HQs or a series of small hubs where people can still go to congregate because culture is still important, because people still, fundamentally we are social creatures. We want to get together. We want to bond. But ultimately, the way that we work and play has been dramatically shifted. And it will continue to improve because of all these collaboration tools that Priyanka and Adam talked about, because of all these automation tools that we talked about earlier that just, get rid of a lot of the manual processes that take the tedium out of work. But ultimately, I do agree with Adam in that people want to get back together. There's something magical about a group of people breaking bread together, sharing a glass of wine or having a beer together, looking each other in the eye, and not just being about business, but talking about families, talking about personal affairs, or even whiteboarding, right? A whiteboard online is, in my opinion, it still leaves a lot to be desired relative to the energy in a room with 3, 4, 5 people or more, and a whiteboard that can really cut, through a lot of time-consuming brainstorming. So the future for me is hybrid, just as Adam said. It is one where there may still be a headquarters, but there's still global acceptance that talent can be anywhere, that talent can work from their home if they want to, that talent can come into a hub when they want to. The idea of 9 to 5 is probably gone. This idea of everybody getting onto the highway at the same time and in the morning and in the evening, it's antiquated. Those of us with kids will probably still have to deal with it. But, for the worker to, come into the office at exactly 9 because the boss is in the office at 9, that's gone. That's over. I think we'll start to see flex hours. I think we'll start to see more of these hubs that I've talked about. And I totally agree with both Adam and Priyanka that we will have much better tools to help us collaborate, innovate, and create.
Great. Thank you very much for spending this time with us and for all your insights today. It was really amazing to have this conversation with you. For those watching us, you are welcome to continue the discussion and joining on Slack, the general channel. And thank you for watching us.